You can't lose that hope, because no matter what, there's always light. There's always light. And if you have the faith to just turn the next page like Veronica did, look at what she found.
Earlier you talked about how faith wins. So from your perspective, where does Veronica's faith come from?
I think that it's deep rooted in her soul. When you have, I don't want to cry.
No, do it.
I probably will.
Do it.
I can. When you have rejection, when decades of just defeat, of being unaccepted, of being isolated, it's very sad. So for her to have a faith to believe that after doctors, after shamans, after crystals, everything failed, that this person could heal her. Wow. The person who had the darkest of days could still see light. I think that's beautiful. And I think it really speaks to people who do have something that they're struggling with, a sickness or, a parent's divorce or death in the family. You can't lose that hope, because no matter what, there's always light. There's always light. And if you have the faith to just turn the next page like Veronica did, look at what she found. I mean, a whole new life. Yeah. So that's Veronica's faith is so powerful to me.
So I think there's a line too where someone says, "How do you feel?" Something about hopelessness, and then Veronica says, "Oh, I haven't lost hope."
Yes.
I'm like,
"Oh yeah,
geez."
In episode 4,
yes.
Good call.
Oh,
it's so intense, and that's a very powerful line, because especially when you think about the story, growing up thousands of years apart from that. I grew up reading it like, what a great faith story. Mm-hmm. But something in my perspective that I never thought of and forgot to look at, because we don't live in a society where the issue of blood is really an issue, where if you're bleeding, you are unclean, and, all these rituals you have to go through for purity. And so when you add that level on top of it for Veronica's faith, that this purity law and what she was going through, how much it would isolate her. Can you talk a little bit about like what an obstacle that would have been for the woman of the issue of blood?
I mean, you wouldn't be able to do anything. You couldn't have a family. Her family abandoned her, probably because it was too hard to keep her, constantly in, a shed environment. She couldn't do any work for her family because they couldn't touch anything. In those days when you're unclean, you can't really, everything you touch is unclean. And I think, you see it a lot in like the pandemic times, like somebody coughs now and it's like, oh gosh. Yeah. So if you can relate to that, that feeling of shame when you cough, imagine if you were a person who lived that every single day. And the law said that you were unclean and dirty. What kind of confidence could you have as a person? I think that's why in the scene when she gets the clothes thrown in her face.
You deceitful woman.
I'm sorry, you don't understand.
Now I'm unclean until sundown.
There's not much of a defeat to her, more than just, this is who I am now. This is what I have to kind of tolerate. And for anyone to be okay with that level of disgrace and shame, and especially when it's just a medical, a normal, natural, physiological thing. But at the time, that's not what it was looked at or looked as. So I think for her, it's the way life is. And I think that's, again, what gives us hope. If somebody can feel like that and come out of it, or still believe there's a way out and then come out of it, like how powerful is that? That was what I really, really wanted to show, that,
That's so good.
And I really thought that was one of those powerful things about Veronica, because when you really look at the obstacle she had to face, and she still had faith. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it just feels like it's so hard to hang on that today, just going through the things we go through. But she's been through this all her life, and she just still was going to push through that crowd and get to Jesus. And it just makes it all the more emotional when that happens.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. One of the things I remember is we were up on a roof watching you guys film that scene, and it was pretty incredible.
Did you have to dress up?
Huh?
Did you get to dress up, or no? You weren't in the shot?
No, we weren't in the shot. We were just on a roof, like hiding, getting some B-roll footage and all that stuff. But
the sound guy was dressed up. That was a very great moment.
I saw that.
It
was was he really?
I
totally missed that.
It's so good. Anyway, sorry.
But one of the things I love about that scene, when I finally got to see it, is just the way that Jesus talks to her, and he calls her daughter, and then he even has this key phrase, "You have blessed me today." I mean, from Veronica's perspective, explain what that moment was like.
Well, that's like a moment for me and for Veronica that we pretty much shared equally. First of all, Jonathan is like a warm hug. His eyes just emulate this place for an actor, to go to those moments. I love doing it. I love moving people, but to go to those moments can be very tough to do. And when you have someone like Jonathan Rumi acting opposite you, it really allows you to make the most vulnerable decisions because he's being equally vulnerable. But for Veronica, when she's, looking at it from her perspective, I mean, she's never been called daughter. Her parents disowned her. So to be said, hey, you're accepted now. I accept you. I think that is, she wants to be a part of a family. She wants to be part of a friend group.
Wow.
And it's almost in a fatherly way, I love you is basically what he's saying, that you are loved. And it's a joyful, teary experience, to see her from the desperation to the determination to the just complete meltdown of relief and joy and just euphoria.
Yeah.
But also confusion. It's like a euphoric confusion because how do I act? I've never been accepted, which you see at the lake.
Yeah.
Kind of like, what do I do here? Are we friends? Are you mad at me because you're dirty? No?
Yeah.
And that's what played in so nicely with the whole story.
All of this available exclusively on the brand new Chosen app, so download it now because it's free.